Since 2015, Jared Stillman has rocked Nashville sports.
That team freaking stinks.
And now he's back. The takes are hotter than ever.
I mean, let's be honest, he just can't coach.
Welcome to Stillman and Company.
Stillman and Company of the 440 Sports Network, presented by Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical. Today, we have our final installment of the breakdown of the Cam Ward docu-series, although it's Cam, Baker, Jaden Daniels, and Joe Flacco, but Netflix's quarterback. We go over episodes 6 and 7. Just not a lot of Cam there, but there was one thing Cam said that I just thought, wait a minute, what? We'll get to that. Plus, the SEC. I find SEC media days to be virtually pointless, but the SEC is threatening to break away from the NCAA for the 9,000th time over the last 5 years. And ESPN yesterday, a bloodbath. ESPN, NFL Network, bunch of big names let go. We'll get into that. And then in about 30 minutes, Caroline Fenton, Yahoo Sports, she'll join the show, and we'll get Caroline's takes on all of those things. First, though, we, of course, want to tell you about our presenting sponsor, which is Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical. I love Hiller. They take great care of my home, and they can do the exact same for you. I have been using Hiller in my home for years. If we ever have an issue, the go-to, it's Hiller. Why would it be anybody else? Hiller is fantastic. It's fabulous. It's the best. And again, that's why I use them at my home. That's Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical. True transparency pricing means everything is line itemed at the beginning. So there's no question as to, wait a minute, where did that extra $300 come from? No, not with Hiller. Everything is put out there before the work is performed. You know what you're paying for. That is Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical. We had somebody yesterday say, hey, I didn't tell them that I used you. Should I? Yes, tell them that you heard about them from Stillman and Company. We would greatly appreciate that. We love Hiller. They take great care of this program. They have been our presenting sponsor pretty much since the inception of Stillman and Company. That's Hiller. Call the Happy Face Truck today. Proud supporters of the Preds, the Vols, and of Vandy. Okay, let's get to the Cam Ward Netflix documentary. I've now seen all 7 episodes. And so now that the whole thing is over, I've got my Cam Ward takes. First, from episodes 6 and 7, they showed Cam on Thanksgiving as he was watching football and watching film at the same time on his iPad. They showed him with his Thanksgiving dinner. Cam said, we just need to fix a couple of things here and there, and we can be an 8 or 10 win football team. And I rolled my eyes at that because the reality is the Titans were lucky to win a game last year. And I know that we can do this with, they lost that game, and if this ball had gone that way, they could have won. And when people do that, I call it loser talk. So when you win, but, they won a game at Arizona where Arizona absolutely pissed away the game. They fumbled a touchdown. They fumbled a touchdown to you, and you ended up winning the game. We all know that Arizona game was all fucked up. Then they won the Cleveland game at Cleveland, where Shedeur Sanders was much better than Cam Ward. And then they beat the Chiefs without Mahomes. But yeah, 1 or 2 plays, just a couple things we fixed. That would go win 8, 10 games. We're in the playoffs. Now, I do expect the Titans. Now, we'll get to this on Monday's show. I do expect the Titans this upcoming season to win some more football games. I haven't gone over the math to figure out how many games exactly I expect them to win. But I do expect them to win some more football games this year. But when Cam said, we 8 to 10 wins, we'll be right there. They showed Cam the next day, which is a Friday, Black Friday. They showed Cam at MBA, working with his personal quarterback coach, going over his fundamentals. I am not a quarterback guru. I am not Jordan Palmer. I am not Brian Dable. I am not Bill Walsh. But there were a lot of times where they were working on the fundamentals and the footwork, and Cam was talking about how important the fundamentals are, and Cam's feet were still not set, or at least they were not set properly. So I don't even know when it comes to the fundamentals what the plan is here with Cam Ward. Why is Cam Ward working out during the football season with his own personal coach an MBA to go over his fundamentals. Shouldn't he be working out at the Titan facility with the Titans coaches during the season? Cam's got his personal quarterback coach talking about you need to do this, you need to do that, you need to this, you need to that. And I get it. Personal quarterback coaches, that's the thing. I'm not knocking Cam for this. To me, this is the Titans. And this is kind of the old coaching staff and Mike Borgonzi. And I'm saying, guys, what the fuck, man? Like, you want Cam on a Friday getting ready to play a game? And he's working out with his own quarterback coach going over his fundamentals? What about your quarterback coach going over his fundamentals? Which really makes me feel like that the Titans just kind of, the coaching staff and the whole operation, they just kind of gave up on getting better. As much as they talk about, oh yeah, we played hard the whole season. And I don't think that they didn't play hard. But I almost feel like the Titan coaching staff, they just kind of, once Callahan got fired, once the writing was on the wall, they just kind of mailed it in, which I don't like. I can't imagine Brian Daboll is going to be okay with Cam getting his outside coaching from his own personal guy during the season. Because I think Brian Daboll would think, no. That's my job. That's what they pay me for. The Netflix documentary showed the Browns game in which Cam Ward broke down the huddle. And he said, hey, that fourth quarter was bullshit, guys. You know, we got to watch the film, get better. Let's go Titans on 3 and 1, 2, 3 Titans. And, of course, the online social media reaction to that was, yeah! My buddy RJ, who's the biggest Cam boy out there, said, Cam is bringing a winning mentality to the team. And I'm like, what exactly does that mean? A winning mentality. Bringing a winning mentality to the team. I'm not sure I totally get that. I don't care about the winning mentality. I care about the winning the games. And also, Cam sucked in that game. Cam's sitting here telling everybody, like, hey, we need to get better. That fourth quarter was bullshit. We need this. We need that. You. Tom Brady told Matt Castle one time, you can't hold anybody else accountable until you're accountable yourself. And, of course, Jeffrey Simmons and everybody else said, Cam's never satisfied. Well, Cam does a lot of talking, and I need to see some more doing. Cam was wearing a sweatshirt when he went to Target, and he spent $10,000 on the kids for their Christmas presents, which good for him. But he was wearing a sweatshirt inside Target that said humble over hype. Cam Ward is like the least humble, terrible quarterback I've ever met. Again, Cam Ward was the worst quarterback in the league, according to QBR. Cam Ward was the third worst quarterback in the league, according to PFF. And then in the last episode of the Netflix documentary, Cam said that he thought he was all right last year. Humble over hype? What? And my brain is so scrambled over what I've seen out of Cam Ward, like actually seen on the field, seen on the practice field, and what everybody else seems to think. It's amazing. I'm watching the Netflix documentary, and they're playing cuts from the Titans radio broadcast. And there's Rhett Bryant at one point saying, the fact is the Titans have their quarterback, and that is a big check. We don't know if they have their quarterback. I mean, I don't even know if the New Orleans Saints have their quarterback in Tyler Shuck, who had a much better rookie season last year than Cam Ward. I don't know if the Giants have their quarterback in Jackson Dart. I don't know that. I, honest to God, don't even know if the Texans have their quarterback in C.J. Stroud, given the way he's played the last couple of years. You're going to tell me a guy that has the worst QBR in the NFL is for sure your quarterback? Let me tell you who knows they have their quarterback. The Patriots, the Commanders, the Bears. They know they have their quarterback. The Chiefs, the Bills, Cincinnati. They know they have their quarterback. Dallas, Seattle, Philadelphia. Even though those guys aren't the elite of the elite, They know they have their quarterback. Dallas knows Dak Prescott is our quarterback. Cam Ward is not Dak Prescott. Cam Ward is not Drake May, at least not yet. I don't get it. I don't see this stuff this time last year. You couldn't have told me New England knows Drake May's their guy. They didn't know that. They hoped. And then I still can't get over Cam saying that his rookie year was all right. I thought this was the guy that got up there at the podium and said, we ass. And then in his documentary was like, well, I'm never going to sugarcoat anything. And you thought your rookie season was all right? Cam, you sucked. You got beat by better rookie quarterbacks. Like when Tyler Shuck came into Nissan Stadium and beat your ass. You won 3 games, one on pure luck against Arizona, one against Chris Aludicon in Kansas City. I mean, again, remember back in the day when they had the strike in the 80s and the NFL played with replacement players? That's what that Chief game felt like. They had been eliminated from the playoffs. It was around Christmas time, and Mahomes had been hurt. And you thought your rookie year was all right? You started the Colts game off with a pick 6. You were terrible against the lowly-ass Raiders. And you thought your rookie year was all right? By what metric was it all right, Cam? By what metric, Cam boys, was it all right? So let me say, I think with Cam, there's this weird benefit of the doubt year that everybody gets the first year when you want somebody to be good, when you want to believe, like Rhett Bryant said in the documentary, we know we have our quarterback. You get the benefit of the doubt for a year. I watched Mariota get the benefit of the doubt. I gave Mariota the benefit of the doubt. I watched Will Levis get the benefit of the doubt. Everything bad that happened to the Titans last year was not Cam Ward's fault. Everything bad that happened to the Titans last year, according to you people, was Brian Callahan's fault. But Brian Callahan didn't get any of the blame for everything bad that happened the year before. And as we know, even though Will Levis was a dope, even though Rand Carthon was not cut out to be a general manager in the NFL, Brian Callahan absolutely was culpable for why that team was as bad as they were in 2024. And Cam Ward was culpable. And so was Mike Borgonzi, by the way. Cam Ward and Mike Borgonzi were culpable for why this team was 3-14 last year, not just Brian Callahan. It is not as simple, I believe, as the terrible Callahan out, the great Robert Saleh in. Cam has to play better. Cam has to improve. Cam has to do it this year. And I think what's going to happen is I think the fans are, once the ball gets put down, they're going to expect a little bit more from Cam. And if they don't see it, then they'll start to turn. Kind of like they did on Callahan. Although it is almost impossible to have as bad of a first game as Brian Callahan had in year 2. Holy crap. So that's the first thing. That's the Cam Ward thing today. We'll get Caroline's thoughts on it. Again, how did you think you did your rookie year? I thought my rookie year was all right. 3-14, dead last in QBR. If I had told you that this time last year, if I've been sitting down with Cam Ward and I said, you are going to be 3-14 this year, your coach is going to get fired, you are going to be dead last in QBR, how would you rate your season? Do you think you would say, that was all right? What if I told you right now? Same thing happened. Let's say Saleh and Dable are dumbasses, just like Callahan, and the team sucks. And the line sucks. They're winging it at center and right guard. Let's say the same thing happens this year that happened last year. Would we say it's all right? Another 3-14 season? I know the answer to that, by the way. The answer is no. By the way, the one thing I do just want to say when it comes to Cam, it drives me insane how you people don't seem to realize that there's really no benefit other than me just telling you, like just me being able to express my feelings for the football team that I love. There is no benefit to me constantly hounding the Cam boys about how you need to expect actual results out of a quarterback. You need to see actual progress out of a quarterback. There's no benefit in that. I think people think that there's some sort of benefit that more people are going to watch this show if I tell it how I think it is with Cam than will if I do what all the other content creators do out there, which is just blow Cam Ward and they make every excuse for it. And there's not. Because if Cam sucks this year, it's not going to be, wow, Jared, you were right. And now we'll listen to you. When you're skeptical and you tell us Nicholas Petit-Frere, a.k.a. PT, cannot play right tackle, we'll listen to you. When you tell us that Rand Carthon's a bad general manager and Chad Brinker's a snake oil salesman, we'll listen to you. When you tell us that the Brian Callahan Pee-wee program's not going to work, we'll listen to you. When you tell us that Cam Ward is not as good as the other top quarterbacks that go number one, we'll listen to you. When you tell us Sam Darnold is good, we'll listen to you. That's never going to happen. What's going to happen is if Cam fails, all the Cam boys will say, yeah, I hoped it was going to work out with Cam, but it didn't. But the new guy we got, the new guy, Jared. So there's no benefit to this for me to just sit here and bitch about Cam other than you people are living on planet Delusia, and it's everything inside of me that drives me insane to see the intellectual dishonesty or the choice of ignorance. That's my Cam Ward thought. Number two, the SEC media days of this week. God, I hate media days. Oh, I hate conference media days. I think conference media days are such a waste of money. And it's not that it's just a waste of money. A lot of things are a waste of money. But I feel like the SEC media days is such a waste of money for people that don't have it. You know, it's these little stations in Alabama and Kentucky and Mississippi and Georgia, and they talk college football, and they have to go all the way to fucking Tampa to sit there and bring on a writer from Yahoo. It's a waste of money. Now, look, maybe they make some sales off of it or whatever, but it's a waste of time. It's a waste of money. I don't know anybody who says to anybody else, did you see what they said at media days? Unless it's some sort of big topic that Greg Sankey could have come on this show said, and it would have had the same reaction. And that's what this is. Greg Sankey went up to the podium. He knew what he was going to do on the first day of conference media days, and he is threatening to leave the NCAA. And yesterday, Kirby Smart at the media days, kind of backed that idea up. And so the SEC has been threatening to leave the NCAA for years and years and years. And Greg Sankey once again floated it out there. Sankey says the SEC breakaway talk over the college bill is, quote, an honest conversation. Heather Dinich, ESPN, says it is a real possibility that the SEC might get so fed up with where things are in terms of legislation that they may take their ball and go home and make their own league and go from there. And do what? Am I the only person that is looking at the Southeastern Conference and hearing the talk of, well, if we can't get the rules we want from the NCAA and the U.S. government, then we're just going to do things our way. We're just going to take our ball and we're just going to go home and say, screw the rest of college football because we're the SEC and it just means more with the SEC, even though we haven't won a national championship in 3 years. What would the SEC do? Somebody help me out here. I guess I'm not smart enough. So the SEC is unhappy with the lack of rules in college football. So they leave the NCAA. And then what? They make their own rules? Well, if you want to play in the SEC, you must maintain a 2.5 GPA. You are not allowed to transfer. You are capped at the money you can make. And we're going to put in all these rules to make it fair. Well, then wouldn't those kids just go to the Big Ten and the ACC and the Big 12? Hey, Ohio State's offering me a bunch of money, and they're not asking me to sign up for all these fakakta rules that I didn't agree to and weren't collectively bargained and the government says I don't have to sign on with. But I'm going to go to Mississippi State instead. So that doesn't make any sense. Number two, who actually wants to watch SEC football if the SEC is not going to compete for the national championship? And if you break away from the rest of college sports, that's what you're doing. You're ruining college football for everybody, including yourself. Think about this. I've said this. We can do college football without the Big 12. And I think the Big 12, deep down inside, knows that. We can do college football without the ACC. With all due respect to Clemson, Miami, and Florida State, the three biggest brands in the ACC. But you can't do it without Notre Dame. And with Notre Dame, somewhat comes the SEC. You cannot do college football without Michigan and Ohio State, and probably to a lesser extent, Penn State and USC. And you can't do college football without the SEC. But the SEC can't do college football themselves. We know the SEC plays a league schedule every year, and the two best teams in the SEC face off in Atlanta, and it gets huge TV ratings. But the popularity of the SEC championship game has dwindled year after year after year because the stakes are not as high as they used to be because we now have a 12-team playoff. So you're going to walk away from the rest of the schools, and you're just going to do your own thing. And whoever wins that is going to play, in December for the championship in Atlanta every year? And you think people are going to give a shit about that? When there's no meeting with Michigan, no meeting with Ohio State, no meeting with USC, no meeting with Notre Dame, no meeting with... You think people are going to watch that? And so that's the second thing. And the third thing, so what's your basketball team going to do? So you're paying John Calipari all this money at Arkansas to coach intramurals? What are these Kentucky basketball fans going to do in March? Hey, look, we've got the NCAA tournament going on right now. Purdue and Carolina in the first round, which, by the way, I watch Purdue versus Carolina in the NCAA tournament. I watch Carolina versus North Carolina A&T in the NCAA tournament. I mean, I like the SEC basketball tournament to a certain extent, but that's not March Madness. March Madness is the NCAA tournament. So the SEC is going to break away from the NCAA, and Kentucky basketball and John Calipari and Rick Barnes and these 20,000-seat arenas are just going to host scrimmages? What are we doing here? This would be like if the American League East decided to break away from the rest of Major League Baseball. Major League Baseball needs the Yankees. They need the Red Sox. But the Yankees and Red Sox can't carry themselves. They need to be competing for the World Series. So if the SEC thinks they're going to break away, who's going to watch the Yankees and the Red Sox and the Blue Jays and the Rays and the Orioles play each other a bunch to win the American League East crown in our new league that we've started over here? Nobody. Not even Yankee fans are going to watch that. If you went up to Alabama fans, Georgia fans, Kentucky basketball fans, and you said, hey, what do you think about leaving the NCAA? I think the first reaction would be, fuck the NCAA. But then after that, it's like, okay, so you wouldn't play any games against Michigan, wouldn't play any games against Ohio State, wouldn't play any games against Notre Dame, wouldn't play any games against Miami, Clemson, Florida State, wouldn't play any of those games. And then, so you're not going to play any of those games, and you're not going to play in the NCAA tournament because, once again, you've decided you're breaking away from the NCAA, so why would they let you do the one thing that everybody wants to do if you're not going to do all the things that everybody doesn't want to do? And what, you're just going to play against yourselves for a whole month? How do you do that? What are those Kentucky basketball fans going to do? And I would just say this. I am so sick and fucking tired of the SEC acting like they're the only game in town. The Big Ten has won 3 national titles in a row. I know. In the early 2000s, the SEC absolutely dominated the sport on the field, in the TV ratings, in attendance, etc. But the SEC hasn't won a title in 3 years. The SEC hasn't played for a national title in 3 years. And now they're acting like they're going to break away from the rest of the sport? What are they going to do? And the SEC has made this threat so many times over that I'm now sitting here at this standpoint and I'm saying, okay, fine, go do it. Go do it. You keep threatening a divorce, go do it. And tell me how that's going to work. And tell me how that, are the TV partners going to want to air intramural SEC basketball games that can't qualify teams for the NCAA tournament because the SEC's too right? No. So I cannot with that. Somebody who actually I'm kind of fascinated by what she thinks about this. Caroline Fenton joins us now on the program. Yeah. Caroline, we got the Cam Ward Netflix documentary that I want to get to, but I do want to get to this SEC news because I think it is just absurd. So let's start there. The SEC has decided to use their conference media days, which you know I hate conference media days.
You do hate it. Yes.
I think they're a total waste of time. I think they're a waste of money for these like small stations in Alabama and Mississippi and Georgia and all those places. They scrounge up whatever cash they have to be able to travel to Tampa.
Why is it in Tampa? I hate that.
To be able to watch the guys at WJOX in Birmingham get every SEC coach on. I don't
those are
get
good
it.
People. You'd be nice to jocks.
But again, I hate the media days. Well, Greg Sankey got up there and once again fired off his threat that we're going to leave the NCAA. If we don't get the rules the way we like it, we are going to leave the NCAA. And there are three things that bother me about this. Number one, why would anybody play in the SEC if the money's the same in the Big Ten for the Michigans and the Ohio States? Why would you play for an SEC that can't win a national championship, that has decided they're going to force their own rules, even though they agreed to the House settlement last year and nobody abided by that? Why would anybody do that? I mean, it's like the USFL or the XFL or whatever. Why would anybody do that? Two, what would happen with all these basketball programs if they leave the NCAA? And three, who would watch an SEC-only competition for anything?
First of all, I don't think that the SEC would break away alone. I don't think the SEC would actually do this without the Big Ten. Like, if there was a breakaway, I think that would be, hey, SEC, Big Ten, and they're going to create a power conference. Because I'm with you, it doesn't make any sense for the SEC to do this, and then they just beat up on each other, and then they have the SEC national championship. So I think that Greg Sankey is a much smarter person and a much better businessman to do that. I don't think that there would be any coaches or athletic directors that would actually be on board with the SEC, breaking away and doing their own thing. It seems to be, something the South does a lot. It's just secede. It doesn't need to be your first thing that you do all the time. So I think the SEC and the Big Ten would do it in lockstep together. That would make a lot more sense to me financially. That would make a lot more sense to me just football-wise. Because if you tell me that, hey, the SEC and the Big Ten are going to break away, they're going to make their own super conference. We've been talking about a super conference between the Big Ten and the SEC forever. They pick up the phone and they call Florida State, they call Miami, they call Clemson, they call who else
Notre Dame.
am I missing here? Notre Dame. And they say, this is what we're going to do. Are you with us or are you against us? Well, that would effectively end whatever is left of the NCAA. That becomes college football. And you've got your North Texases and your Memphises, no disrespect to North Texas, Memphis, floating around in NCAA college football. And that is just rendered essentially useless. That is a business model that makes much more sense to me. And we've seen Tony Petitti, commissioner of the Big Ten, and Greg Sankey kind of be walking hand in hand in all of this, like the Protect College Sports Act, for example, something that Commissioner Jim Phillips, commissioner of the ACC, has been in support of, something that not Greg Sankey nor Tony Petitti have supported. So I think that any move, massive move, the SEC makes, the Big Ten would go along with it and vice versa. I think that they're in lockstep. Other than that, I don't think this makes any sense. I think that it's so dumb. And I do want to clarify one thing. Greg Sankey did not threaten this. Greg Sankey was asked, are the conversations real? Which I'm not going to take anybody to school on journalism or how to ask questions 101, but that's how you don't ask a question is, are the conversations real? Because Greg Sankey took that as, Yeah, and the conversations are real. Like, we're having these conversations. We have had these conversations for a long time. That if college football can't figure its own shit out, we're going to figure the shit out for ourselves. So it wasn't necessarily a threat. I don't think that this is imminent, and I don't think that this is a move that would happen in the short-term future in the slightest. But I do think that this is kind of like a big dick contest for Greg Sankey and the rest of college football, is just, hey, the threat that we can do this because we're better than you. I think it's dumb, though. I don't think it would ever happen.
So I don't think the SEC has any leverage. You know, the SEC keeps talking about how great they are and how they could break away. And I'm looking at, again, they've been crying for years about political intervention, you know, government legislative intervention. They get a bipartisan bill, which is probably not going to pass anyways, but they get a bipartisan bill with Maria Cantwell and Ted Cruz on it. And they decide we don't like this. So now we're going to try to force the issue even more. You talk about Sankey and his business chops, and I wouldn't disagree with that. But if my choice was an expert negotiator or great leverage, I would choose great leverage over the negotiator. It's almost like, what would you rather have, a great coach or great players? They'd rather have great players.
Right.
And so I don't know what the SEC's leverage is here. I almost feel like the SEC is trying to use the leverage that they've been able to use in other instances, like bullying the college football playoff into expansion or other things like that. They're trying to use that same leverage here to try to bully the government that, quite frankly, could ultimately walk away from this and say, fine, you guys figure it out, go on your own. I don't see what the SEC's real leverage is to be able to break away from the NCAA when, again, they've been begging for help for years and years and years because they know they can't do it themselves.
Why do you believe the SEC doesn't have leverage?
Because what would their leverage be? We're going to take Texas and Georgia and Alabama and LSU, and we're going to go play in our own football league. You'll see.
I mean,
is that good enough leverage? Is that good enough leverage for Ted Cruz and Maria Cantwell to say, okay, fine, let's go ahead, rip up the bill and do whatever the SEC wants?
I don't think that's necessarily leverage for lawmakers. I do think it's probably enough leverage for college football, which are two different things, but it feels like recently are one and the same, because if anybody doesn't like anything that the NCAA says, then you just cry and run to Congress. I don't know, honestly. I don't know if that's enough for, Maria Cantwell and Ted Cruz to start tinkling in their pants and making, drafting a bill that's more advantageous for the SEC and the Big Ten. What I want to know, though, is because, like I said, Greg Sankey and Tony Petitti have not shown support for the Protect College Sports Act. What do they want? Like, what will make them say, yes, we want to sign off on that? Because let's not get it twisted. Greg Sankey's bottom line is the SEC. Tony Petitti's bottom line is the Big Ten. Jim Phillips' bottom line, it's the ACC. As much as we want all day long to act like everybody's looking out for the greater good of college football, you don't get paid for the greater good of college football. You get paid for the greater good of your conference. So anything that might be good for the Big Ten or the SEC probably isn't good for the ACC or the Big 12 or the Group of Five and everybody else. So if it comes down to it that, like, Greg Sankey and Tony Petitti just want something that's just not good for the rest of college football or what the rest of college football wants, I don't know where you find a common ground there. I don't know where you find, a place that, hey, everybody can agree to, whenever one side clearly wants one thing and it is the total and complete opposite of the other. I just don't know how you proceed here. And I don't know how you can, pass legislation that doesn't have the support of the two most powerful commissioners of the two richest conferences in all of college football, and the two conferences that command more eyeballs than any other conference, that have teams that have far more intrigue than any other conference in all of college football.
You can pass the legislation. I mean, the legislation, the law is what you make of it. I mean, again, they want to pass this legislation without any collective bargaining from the players. I mean, I don't know exactly how you do that, and that to me would get struck down. But
that's the next step. There's no way that we can go any further without collectively bargaining, I don't think. I just think that opens up maybe more complications. But there's just not a world in college football that can exist, like an actual world that is healthy, an actual world that makes sense, an actual world where there are legitimate guidelines and rules that people actually abide by without collectively bargaining. Like, we can't just cry and go to Congress every single time something gets passed or rules are enforced and we don't like it.
So the problem here is the compromise angle of it. I mean, the SEC wants to be able to make as much money as humanly possible. So they want to be able to take Miami from the ACC. They want to be able to take, for sure, they want to take North Carolina. They want to add teams that will bring more money to their television revenue pockets. The Big Ten is just trying to protect the money that they make, because I cannot imagine that NBC or CBS likes the deal that they've made with the Big Ten with all the money that they're paying for these crap games they're getting, which is why the Big Ten is desperate for play-in games and expanded college football spots so that they can then sell those play-in games or give those play-in games to NBC and CBS so that it can justify the money that NBC and CBS are spending on the Big Ten, especially knowing that baseball is about to come up in a couple of years. And I don't know about you, but I would absolutely ditch the third best Big Ten game for the World Series, 100%. If that's what it all came down.
The best Big Ten game is like Minnesota, Iowa, watched by like 14 people.
It's terrible. So I would absolutely, and the ACC and the Big 12 are just trying to survive. And I think what's happened here is with the Protect College Sports Act, what they've decided is, okay, you guys can get to make the most money in the SEC and the Big 10. And the Big 10, you get to figure out what you want with the playoff, but there's no guarantee here. But you have to keep the ACC and the Big 12 around, and you can't have these super conferences, and you need to pool your media rights. And the SEC is like, wait a minute, no, we don't want to do that. And at some point, when it comes to negotiations, the best deal is usually the fairest deal, which is a deal where everybody leaves unhappy. And the SEC and the Big Ten have said, we're just not going to leave unhappy. And if they're not going to leave unhappy, then there's no way that they can come to an agreement because the different sides want different things. I do want your opinion on the Cam Ward docuseries, the Netflix quarterback docuseries. Number one, I have to say, I laughed my ass off in the last episode. Cam Ward takes the kids to Target and he takes them on a shopping spree and he's buying them video games. And his sweatshirt said, humble over hype. And yet, when I watch this documentary, all I ever hear from his own teammates, from his parents, from his coaches, from him, is about how good he's going to be. Now, the metrics say he was the worst quarterback in the NFL last year, according to QBR. He had the lowest PFF grade at quarterback, with the exception of Dylan Gabriel and Shedeur Sanders. Cam Ward, humble over hype. Meanwhile, his dad's on the documentary talking about how he's going to be a great leader. His mom says he's already a good quarterback. He's going to be a great quarterback. I'm trying to understand what is going on here. I feel like I am living in a world where I see Cam Ward as a guy who was a first-round talent, but was not a top-of-the-draft talent. He was not Jaden Daniels coming out. He doesn't have the resume of Fernando Mendoza that Fernando Mendoza has. But the Titans drafted him. They told everybody he was Mahomes. The fans said he was Mahomes. And he went 3-14, and he was terrible, and the coach got fired, and they brought in a 20-36 coach to be his head coach, and yet everybody tells me Cam's got the winning mentality, Cam's going to be great, Cam's going to be... What am I missing that apparently everybody else in the Netflix documentary and everybody else in Titan land sees? What am I missing, Caroline?
I thought you were going to say your favorite part was when Cam Ward said he was going to peg the shit out of the kids that he was playing dodgeball with.
How about that? I heard that line and I was like, man, I don't know if you know exactly what people will take that as.
I don't want to clutch my pearls here. Cam Ward cussed a lot in the docuseries. And I'm like, dude, like this is your brand. Okay. Like, I'm not going to say you can't cuss. I'm not going to say that you have to be driving Miss Daisy kindergarten teacher, but like, maybe let's tighten it up. No pun intended, just a little bit. I mean, people have to say, and first of all, I'm not going to critique what his parents say about him. Of course, his mom is going to say that he's a good quarterback and can be a great quarterback. It's his mom. I don't have kids. I'm sure one day when I do have kids that I'm going to be my kid's number one cheerleader. And I'm not going to necessarily criticize my kids, especially in a documentary about them. So
well, we're getting close to the terrible twos over in our house, and I've got to put my foot up my son's ass. So I'm not afraid to knock him down a few pay. He got put in timeout the other day. I am not afraid to do that.
Okay, well, there's a difference between putting your almost 2-year-old in timeout and saying, yeah, you know what, my son kind of sucked last year. Hopefully he can be better. The winning mentality. What else are you going to say about him? Because you can't call him a winner because he didn't win.
They do.
But like saying you have a winning mentality. That's like when LeBron James said, I'm going to go wherever makes me happiest. It's because you can't quantify that. Like you can't put an actual number or metric or analytic on happiness. I can't go inside of Cam Ward's mind and look around and say, yep, winning mentality. I see it right here. Check. Because it's the only thing that you can say about him is he's got a good mindset. He's got a good mentality. There's not really much lipstick that you can put on a 3-14 pig. I'm also not going to say that Cam Ward is awful and terrible and has, zero hope in the league because we watched Brian Callahan. We know he's a total and complete dodo bird. We know that that organization is totally and completely dysfunctional. So I can't put that all at the feet of Cam Ward. But the question is he the kind of guy that can make up for a dysfunctional organization? Is he the kind of guy that can overcome a dumb coach? Last year, he wasn't. So I'm not going to say that I've lost total and complete faith in Cam Ward, but I'm also not going to say that just because he was the number one overall pick, that he can do what other number one overall picks have done, or what Jaden Daniels did as the number 2 overall pick. Jaden Daniels elevated a total and complete crap franchise and got them to the divisional round of the playoffs. Joe Burrow elevated a crap franchise and got a franchise that has not won nothing in its history to the quarterback in his second year. And I promise that's not just me trying to hype up the quarterbacks that went to my alma mater. That is just what they did.
Well, you also did a bad job because Jaden Daniels got to the NFC Championship game. But
what did I say?
Divisional round. You cut him short.
NFC champion. I cut him short.
You sold him short.
I sold him short. I shouldn't have done that. But all that to say, I haven't lost faith in Cam Ward, but it's also not all the Titans' fault.
Did you have faith in Cam Ward, though? Again, when the Titans took him number 1 overall, I'm obviously very, it's well documented that I wanted them to sign Sam Darnold and trade the pick, and I've harped on that all the time. I feel like
documented by you.
I feel like most people, honestly, most people kind of felt that way at that time, including you. Cam Ward gets drafted number 1 overall, and the Titans unretire Warren Moon's number for him, and they say that he's the next Mahomes, and they do all of that bullshit, which doesn't mean anything, but they do all that hyping of Cam Ward when they took him. Did you think, you know what? This guy's going to be a franchise quarterback because he was a 0-star recruit and he went to Miami and he didn't even make the ACC title game. I just have such a hard time with them being like, he's a winner. He's determined. He's got the winning attitude. He's a champion. He's a this. He's a that. But really, is he those things? Because how many championships has he won? Did he win a championship at Washington State? Nope. Did he win a championship at Incarnate Word? Nope. Did he win a championship at Miami? Nope. Did he win an ACC championship? Nope. I mean, Fernando Mendoza won the Heisman and won the national championship. Jaden Daniels won the Heisman Trophy. What has Cam Ward done that justifies all this hype?
To be fair, Caleb Williams didn't win a championship.
He was the Heisman Trophy winner.
He was. Drake May wasn't. He didn't go to an ACC championship game.
But I don't think people ever did people look at Drake May and say, this guy is going to be successful because he's a winner? Or did they say this guy's going to be successful because he's 6'4" and he's accurate and he's athletic and you talk to Tim Hasselbeck every week. Tim Hasselbeck is the biggest Drake May fan I've ever met in my entire life.
Drake May.
Was it ever, Drake May's a winner? Was it ever the intangibles about Drake that, oh my God, this is why you got to take this guy? Or was it the tangibles with Drake that make him a rare prospect?
I mean, it was probably a little bit of both. And, you don't take a guy number 3 overall if you don't think that he's going to be a winner. I didn't love the Titans drafting Cam Ward number 1 overall and making him the immediate starter. But to be fair, I don't know if I would have loved the Titans taking anyone number 1 overall and making him the immediate starter. Because you and I both talk about this all the time. The infrastructure around a young quarterback is almost as, if not just as important as the quarterback himself. Like, I always wonder, if Patrick Mahomes didn't have the opportunity to sit behind Alex Smith for however many years, would he have become Patrick Mahomes? If Patrick Mahomes didn't have Andy Reid and Travis Kelce, would he have become Patrick Mahomes? Like, maybe, sure, but also maybe not. Like, I think that organizations ruin young quarterbacks far more than young quarterbacks ruin themselves or ruin organizations. So I just didn't believe in the infrastructure or the organization to be able to foster and develop a young quarterback. I mean, the Titans already tried as hard as they could to ruin him in his rookie season with Brian Callahan, Bobo at a head coach. So I also viewed Cam Ward as more of a project prospect. There's nothing wrong with a project prospect. Like, Ty Simpson is a project prospect as well. So there's nothing wrong with that. If you see the potential, if you say this guy can be our franchise quarterback, then sure, you go out and you take that guy. But I don't think that the Titans have set him up in the slightest for success, because he was one that probably needed to slow cook a little bit more than other quarterbacks.
The Rams did not draft Ty Simpson, and they go, he's Mahomes.
Yeah, right.
Which I feel like the Titans did. Ty Simpson's going to be sitting on the bench this year. I actually brought this up the other day because Ian Rappaport reported that Fernando Mendoza may sit the bench this year with the Raiders. They hope that Kirk Cousins is their starting quarterback. They don't know how long Kirk Cousins will be their starting quarterback, but they hope Kirk Cousins is their quarterback. I'm looking at the Raiders. When we talk about infrastructure for a young quarterback, I'm looking at the Raiders right now, and I'm thinking, I think they're actually building something for Mendoza to be successful. Yeah. Their defense last year was 14th in the league. They ended up keeping Max Crosby, who's the best player on that defense. They signed Quay Walker and Nakobe Dean. So they've got a solid defense.
Tyler Raiders do.
Then they go out in free agency and they pay the suck tax to the nth degree for a bona fide all-pro caliber center. Mm-hmm. So their offensive line, which was a mess last year, you are now getting a true and tried legitimate ace at that position. Now you're paying for it, but you're doing that. You've got the best tight end in the NFL. You've got a running back you drafted in the first round last year. That look, I know Genty didn't have a great season statistically. I think you can hand the ball to Genty 30 times a game in the NFL.
Yeah.
So if you want to bring a young quarterback along, you got a tight end, you got a running game, and you've got the option with Kirk Cousins to play Kirk Cousins as long as you want until you feel the need to put Mendoza in there. You've got a head coach that just won a Super Bowl as the offensive coordinator running the offense in Seattle, an offensive guy. Again, we don't know if he's going to be any good or not, but instead of a coach on the hot seat who has to win now, who has to show that he's developing his quarterback, Clint Kubiak can do whatever he wants. I think the Raiders are building a very good infrastructure around Fernando Mendoza, whereas the Titans said they were going to have a plan for Cam Ward, and it's obvious they didn't have a plan for Cam Ward. That being said, though, I also think Mendoza is a better prospect than Cam Ward.
But if Cam Ward stepped into what the Raiders are building around Fernando Mendoza, I'd probably be a lot more optimistic about Cam Ward.
Yeah.
I'd be optimistic about any prospect that's stepping into that. And, oh, yeah, by the way, who do you have as a mentor? The greatest quarterback to ever play the sport of football in Tom Brady. So, and I have to believe that's a big part of why the Raiders have gone out and made so many of these swings, is because Tom Brady has talked a lot about the value of sitting the bench, the value of learning, the value of infrastructure around the quarterback, and not just throwing the young quarterback to the wolves and hoping that he can dig you out of whatever hole you dug yourselves into. So I am with you. I have been so high on the Raiders this past offseason, and we talk a lot about it on Yahoo Sports Daily. Obviously, Fitz is a diehard Raiders fan. And Fitz has talked about how he's cautiously optimistic, cautiously, of course, because as a Raiders fan, you can't not have a little bit of, cautious with your optimism. But he told me he talked to one of his Raiders buddies who spent some time in the National Football League. And he said, like, last year, the Raiders offensive line was the worst offensive line that he has ever seen in his life. Not even just worse in the NFL last year, like worst he has ever seen. So what do the Raiders do? They go out and they upgrade the offensive line. They go out and get one of the best, if not the best centers in the NFL, which opens things up for Ashton Genty. I don't think the reason why Ashton Genty had a bad season last year is because Ashton Genty all of a sudden forgot how to play the running back position. So I do love what the Raiders are doing. I think anyone could step into that position and you would feel good about it. But I mean, obviously, Fernando Mendoza he's the best.
Finally, Caroline, you worked at ESPN for a time, and yesterday, ESPN, they've acquired the NFL Network. There were the layoffs and some big names. Karl Ravich, Ryan Clark, Cam Newton, Charles Davis, Tom Pelissero, etc. What do we make of this? And I want to start on the Ryan Clark thing.
Yeah.
First of all, I think ESPN let go of people that had options. And what I mean by that is Ryan Clark has a podcast. Cam Newton has his own podcast and his own brand and played quarterback in the NFL. Karl Ravich, he's a baseball guy, and ESPN doesn't really have baseball anymore. So whenever the negotiating comes open, NBC wants to be a player. I don't know if CBS wants to get back in on baseball, but if they do, Karl Ravich can just go wherever baseball ends up going. Charles Davis is calling games on CBS.
I love
Tom Pelissero. I think, as I tweeted out yesterday, I do believe The Athletic has a need for an insider. Perhaps Tom Pelissero could be that guy. I think Pelissero is the worst of the group in terms of the decision that they made to get rid of him. But I have to say, a lot of people are making a big deal about this. I don't think this is a big deal. And I think ESPN just looked at people that they thought had other options and weren't vital cogs to the operation, and they made those moves. Am I wrong for thinking that?
No, you're not wrong. I would also look at some of the people that they decided to not move on from and say, well, they probably have other options too. There's a lot of ESPN personalities that have other things going on, whether that's calling games, podcasts, could land on their feet and go literally anywhere tomorrow if they wanted to. I also think it's just not really up to ESPN to say, well, you have another stream of income, so it's fine. Like Karl Ravich has been at ESPN for 33 years. If there's anybody that you're like, hey, look, we have to make some layoffs. If you want to leave on your own accord, you want to go do baseball, if you want to call college basketball games for TNT in the tournament, let's talk about this. Ryan Clark, firing him in the middle of the show, they did him dirty. Cam Newton, I honestly don't really know what Cam Newton offers to First Take. I think he has some crazy and dumb takes sometimes. But I think Karl Ravich is one that's look, you've been so loyal to this company. You've been here for so long. Just laying him off in the middle of the day on a Tuesday feels like he was done dirty. Is it the end of the world? No, it's not. I feel like anytime there's a round of layoffs that comes out, that does feel like there's a little bit of a doomsday mentality. It's not the end of the world, but it is kind of sad and it is scary to see the way that the industry is going, especially understanding that a lot of their salaries are probably just going to Stephen A. Smith and to Pat McAfee.
When it comes to Ryan Clark, I heard Stephen A. on his radio show yesterday, and obviously, we're coworkers with Stephen A. on Mad Dog Radio. But I was listening to Stephen A., and he was obviously very upset about the decision to move on from Ryan Clark. Right-wing Twitter is very, very excited about ESPN's decision to move on from Ryan Clark. This is my thought on the Ryan Clark thing.
Mm-hmm.
I do not like Ryan Clark. Now, I don't know Ryan Clark, the guy, but I don't like Ryan Clark, the analyst. I don't think he's very insightful. There's very few people out there that I turn the TV off when they start talking, and he's one of them. Mm-hmm. And it's not that I don't like Ryan Clark. It's not that I hate the guy or I don't agree with his politics I think he's said some crazy shit, but a lot of people think I say some crazy shit. I don't find him interesting. I don't like him on that halftime show with Jason Kelce, and I don't really even need Jason Kelce on that halftime show either. I just don't think Ryan Clark is that good. And for some reason, it's either Ryan Clark was the best and ESPN's making this unbelievable mistake, or ESPN is cutting bait with the left wingers who are too woke, like Ryan Clark, who makes everything a race issue, again, according to right-wing Twitter. I just don't see it like that. I see it like Ryan Clark is a former player who talks on TV, and he's fine, I guess. I don't find his commentary very interesting, but I don't think this is some sort of huge, this is not John Madden we're talking about here. This is not like an irreplaceable piece. And yet everybody acts like Ryan Clark is that important. Is Ryan Clark that important?
I mean, like, no. Like, is Ryan Clark irreplaceable? No. I think Stephen A is irreplaceable. Like, Stephen A, the person, Stephen A, just the figurehead, Stephen A carries a brand in and of itself. I think it's fair to say that Stephen A may even be bigger than ESPN itself. Also, another layoff, Stefania Bell. That one hurts.
I do love her.
Stefania Bell is the best. But Ryan Clark makes $2 million a year, reportedly. And I think that you can replace that. You can find another former player that brings great insight on the game. You can find somebody else that's willing to embrace debate and doesn't talk down to your co-host for not being former players in the past.
But does Ryan Clark bring great insight?
I'm saying you can find someone else to do that. If you believe that he does, you can find someone else to do that for a quarter of the price, if not less. Like
Joe and Troy matter. Like, I don't think you can just replace Joe and Troy because they tried and they had Booger on the sidelines but this idea that like Ryan Clark is worth us sitting here and talking about and being like, how dare they get rid of Ryan Clark, or, oh, thank God Ryan Clark's gone. I don't feel that way at all. I don't know.
Honestly, I don't care.
I don't care either.
A lot of people use Ryan Clark to push a political agenda one way or another. That if you are on the left, Ryan Clark getting fired is proof that, that they're trying to, belittle him. They're trying to take away his platform, that ESPN is going one direction politically. And if you're on the right, then you believe, ESPN has finally come to their senses. It's taking away left-wing, voices. It's confirmation bias. You believe one thing, you believe that he might represent one thing, beliefs one way or another. And ESPN laying him off, like, pushes your agenda, confirms your bias in one way or another. Whereas in reality, I would say he was probably a total pain in the ass when it came to contract negotiations because he made those public. He was making a lot of money and maybe didn't bring the value that they were paying him. Could be as simple as that.
I mean, I'll just say last year, with my whole contract thing, I remember talking to somebody who's an executive with one of the teams in town, and they were like, man, we talk all the time, and you never talked about how you were redoing your contract. I was like, well, I didn't think it was anybody else's business.
Yeah.
I mean, I do understand the hypocrisy of me talking about everybody else's contract every day and not talking about my own contract, thinking, that's not anybody else's business. Deep down inside, I think that Ryan Clark, that's just who he is. He's going to be that guy. And I think ESPN just decided, you know what? We can be fine without Ryan Clark. We'll be fine. What I think really is going to happen here, and maybe it's an efficiency thing, I think the NFL Network is about to go to shit. I think the NFL Network, not that I'm a huge NFL Network fan anyways, but I feel like what they're going to do is they're going to replace Ryan Clark with somebody off of NFL Network. And they're going to just kind of consolidate the two. Pelissero, I think, is getting a get-out-of-jail-free card because he's going to go to CBS or somewhere like that and be their Sunday insider. And I think Pelissero is very good at what he does. Charles Davis, he's fine. Ravich is going to go somewhere where he can call baseball. Like, sometimes I wonder with ESPN, like, so what's the plan here? Like, is the plan now for ESPN to do what they swore they wouldn't do 15 years ago when Cowherd left and went to Fox, and they were like, well, we just can't pay him $5 million a year. And now we're just, you know what? We're going to basically license McAfee, so we don't even own that. We've got Stephen A. Smith, who now has his own radio show that's away from us, his own YouTube show that's away from us. We're just going to acquire other brands and then just put them out there. I don't think that's a very good business play. I mean, that's why Netflix and Amazon and all these places want their own original programming, Because if you don't own the programming, then after a while, you're just renting it. And I wonder if, like, is that what ESPN's doing? They already do that with the rights, which are the most important things that they have. What do we think the plan is for ESPN? Is there a plan for ESPN big picture?
I think the plan is probably, because let's not act like this is the first round of layoffs that ESPN has ever had. This is already the second round of layoffs this year. I worked at ESPN for 1 year and 10 months. I went through 3 rounds of layoffs. So this happens a lot. So I think ESPN is just going to do what they've done, what they continue to do. They lay off people that are either making too much money or are not valuable enough to the company, and they backfill with other people. They'll promote from within, backfill it with other people that are cheaper labor.
I don't have a problem with that, by the way. As long as to me, as long as you're not somebody who's irreplaceable, like a Cowherd. Like Cowherd was irreplaceable to ESPN Radio. ESPN Radio was never the same the day Cowherd left. That is different to me.
2 people at ESPN that are truly irreplaceable, and that's Stephen A. Smith and Pat McAfee.
I would throw Joe and Troy in there too.
I do forget that they're part of ESPN, but yes, I think that is fair. And that doesn't mean that I don't love other personalities at ESPN, but they're replaceable.
Like Jay Billis is replaceable. We'll still watch Duke and Carolina, and they'll still have the Duke-Carolina game if Jay's not calling it. Dickie V is replaceable.
He's just a gem of a human and a person in this industry. Mina Kimes is a rare combination of what she does. Like, there's so many people at ESPN that I have so much respect for, but I do think that at the end of the day, it's going to come a time for ESPN to weigh, like, are you valuable enough versus what we're paying you?
Okay, if there was one ESPN employee that we did not mention, so not Stephen A., not McAfee, not Joe and Troy. Yeah. If there's one ESPN employee that Mike Foss, the guy who I think calls the shots now at ESPN, if Mike Foss called you, because you used to work for Mike Foss, right?
I did. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so if Mike Foss called you and he said, Caroline, who's the one person that I've got to protect no matter what, and it can't be Stephen A. McAfee or Joe and Troy, who would it be?
That's a good question. That's a very good question. One name that came to mind for me was Paul Feinbaum. But, like, I think the Paul Feinbaum show can exist without Paul Feinbaum. He's unique, but, like, it's a show that's driven more by the callers than it is Paul Feinbaum himself.
Let me say this. If I lose Feinbaum at ESPN and then just hire Josh Pate to replace him, what do I really lose?
Yeah. Like, I think that show itself is important on a different scale, obviously, because the SEC network's importance versus, ESPN's importance is different. But that's not a show that's driven by the personality. Pat McAfee show is driven by the personality. First Take is driven by Stephen A. Smith's personality. I honestly, I don't know. Herb Street?
I would say Greenberg.
Greenberg?
Because Greenberg does more standalone stuff than, like, again, Herbie, are you not going to watch Georgia, Texas because Herbie's not calling the game? Because their new number one, I guess their new number one would be Greg McElroy. And, I mean, I don't know. I like Greg McElroy, but he's not Herb Street. But if Greg McElroy called the games,
Greg McElroy.
We'd still watch.
Yeah.
So I think I go Greenberg because, again, I think he represents ESPN the most, but I don't think really outside of Stephen A., McAfee, and Joe and Troy, there are really any sacred cows there. And
also, let me just say, that's not a bad thing. Like, if we can only come up with 2, maybe 3 personalities that are absolute sacred cows at ESPN, I don't think that necessarily says anything bad about the people that we didn't mention. It's just, I think, more so the nature of the business.
Yeah. Caroline Fenton, as always. Caroline, always great to chat with you. And would you say this, because this has been something that's been running through my mind. Mm-hmm. Was Kyler Murray a bust for the Arizona Cardinals?
Yeah.
Okay, good. That's all I wondered. Caroline Fenton from Yahoo Sports joining us on the program here. Like and subscribe. Thank you to Caroline for joining us on the program. Stillman and Company. We'll be back Friday, our final summer show before training camp starts. Like and subscribe. Tell your friends. Stillman and Company, the 440 Sports Network.